Check, 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 check. 1, 2. Hi, friends. Nice to see you. Good to be here. My name is Dean, and we are back with yet another friendly show. Depends on who you are. It's probably not going to be friendly for some people, probably friendly for others. And I brought a friend to do it. Please welcome back to the program from the national show here in Canada, friend of Crier Media, friend of ACAST. Please welcome to the program from the O Show out of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, Laura Babcock. Ms. Babcock, nice to see you again. Oh, you did the devil horns. You did the devil horns to start.
Every photo of me you'll ever see outside has my aviators on and devil horns. I've not gotten out of my youth.
No, and I saw a few this weekend on Twitter too, because you were traveling this weekend. You had a nice little getaway with the hubby. I know you went, I believe, to Quebec City, if I'm not mistaken. Were you in Quebec City this weekend?
It's our little escape if we can't get to Europe, and it was our 25th wedding anniversary. So we went. Didn't bring the kids this time. Good time, Quebec City. We love it.
Didn't bring the kids. Congratulations. Nice going. 25 years. You still into it, huh? You still like marriage? You still happy? You still married the right guy? You're good?
I'm not gonna. Oh, he's great. I'm not gonna lie. The pandemic, losing my mom and like 5 of my other family members in 2.5 years, I was not a treat to live with. But that's part of life, right? You go through your ups and downs in a marriage. You each have your times when you're not firing on all cylinders. And so he's been patient with me, and I've tried to be patient with him during his stuff. And we were pretty proud, 25 years, to still be in love and have a crazy romantic holiday. So it's all good.
How great is that? You don't hear that very often. Would he say the same thing? Would he say the same thing? Would he be like, yeah, this is, he would. He'd be like, yeah, this is my partner. This is my best friend, all that other stuff.
You know what? I posted it because 26 years ago, when we were friends, right? We worked in TV together. Mm-hmm. And then he was like,
was this an office romance that progressed into more, if you will?
I was the reporter. He was the cameraman, right? All that good stuff. And so when I didn't want to get married so young, because I was only like 24 and he was only like 21. But, you know, when you find the person, right? And so we were talking about it. And I said to him, listen, if you want to be with me, I'll make you a promise. It's not always going to be easy, but it will never be boring. So 25 years later, at our hotel room in Quebec City, he has this big, beautiful box delivered. And it's like this gorgeous box. I'm like, what is this? It's not like, he's not a guy for like buying stuff, right? He's more just sweet, right? And so, and it's like
he makes you things instead. Is he one of those guys that doesn't buy you things? He'll like make you a coffee table.
Oh yeah, he can build anything, fix anything. He's that guy, right? Yeah. And so, but we're not into we're not into gifts and big gestures. And so we like to travel and stuff. So anyway, so this thing comes. I go, you don't buy, like we don't do this. It's weird. I open it up, and it's this arrangement of roses, but by some florist in Quebec, they last for a year if you don't touch them. They have some incredible, I don't know what it is, but they're gorgeous. And the card said, thanks for keeping your promise. It's never been boring. And I'm like, that is awesomely sweet. And one other thing he did, since we're bragging about Rob and embarrassing him, because he will be, because we've been to Quebec so many times. So what he did this time was he did this big game, and I posted it, and with the kids, where all of our different stops on the itinerary for Quebec were little like clues and little envelopes, and he had this thing designed.
Oh, it's like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, but he had it like on his poster board. He bought me champagne and roses before we left and had the kids see all the things we're going to do on our weekend adventure. I think it was pretty awesome. I did nothing, Dean, other than buy him a big motorcycle thing for his new motorcycle. But everything else, like he really killed it. So it was awesome.
You guys French kissed that night, didn't you?
A little bit. Well, you know. Quebec. What are you gonna do? I'm from Quebec. What else am I gonna do anyway?
Well, that's a guy that's going, hey, listen, I'm gonna French kiss my wife later on tonight if I play my cards right. But it's nice to hear you talk, because you're one of the very few people. And by the way, I get it because I'm a dude. Nice work, Rob. Nice work. But there are very few relationships that are 25 years long. Number one, right? So let's give you a little bit of credit for that. And sometimes you go to these like anniversary dinners. You know, I was at one like not long ago where my buddy's parents married. They celebrated their 60th. And I'm like, I go up to the old dude. I'm like, hey, dude, congratulations. And he's like, for what? And she's sitting like 4 feet away from him, sipping her juice. And he's sitting there sipping his beer. And I go, 60 years. It's a big deal. And he's like, they weren't all great.
And hey, that was my answer to you off the top, right? There have been times where I've been like a little much to live with, and times where he's been a little much. But if you partner with somebody that more than anything else, you respect who they are as a person, then things like your ups and downs with your looks and things like your career and grieving and all that other shit that happens in life. If you fundamentally respect them and you want to be a better person for them, then it brings you up, right? It brings you both up. And I always respected the hell out of Rob. Before we were even dating, I respected how he treated his other girlfriend, and I was just like, and I respected how he worked, and I just respected him as a man. And so I think when you feel that way, that doesn't go away, right? That core character, if a person has a good character you respect, then that doesn't change no matter what happens to your body. And God knows,
Some things happen. Yeah, no, my body's been through it. I've had a couple of different ones. I think we all have in those relationships. But what's a secret for you? Because I've been married, divorced, right? I didn't know we were going to get into a personal conversation, but I'm happy to do it. Married, divorced. And when I talk to people now about, and I'll never get married again, but happily in a relationship. And the thing that I know now that's different from Dean then to Dean now is Dean actually takes the person's values into account and the virtues of the person. So, but when you're young, you don't really realize that. You're going like 100 miles an hour. You're young when you got married, right? Young when you had kids. So it's very uncommon for those relationships that start that young as you or Rob started, to morph into these beautiful relationships where those values are even more intrinsic, even more shared, and you've grown together instead of apart, right? So what's your secret, Laura? Give me the Laura, Rob, foie gras in Montreal, still in love 25 years later, 1 year roses that don't melt, French kissing weekend. How do you keep that stuff alive, sister? Tell me.
You got to own your shit. You have got to own your shit. You've got to know when you are not giving as much to the other person. You got to know when you stepped out of bounds, right? You got to be able to apologize and do better. You just have to. If you respect the person and you own your shit, then you can get through anything, right? It's when you build up, and I have over the years, and I'm sure Rob has, resentments, and you don't look at your part in it, and you don't own your shit, and you don't forgive, and you don't forgive yourself and forgive them, then you just build this kind of wall of bitterness and grievance that's almost impossible to get over, right? So when we see ourselves starting to build those bricks of that wall, one of us always is, first to own our shit and lead the other one through. And we've all, it's funny because we've always kind of been like that with each other. Like when we were working and he was directing a show, and he is a fantastic camera guy, one of the top in the country, in my humble opinion. But he was directing a lot of stuff, and he was a little late on his run sheet. And I saw that, and I was done filing my story. So I went and did his run sheet for him, and I just had it on the desk. And then when the panic moment came, I saw it's right there. And he was like, I can't believe that you had my back and you saw that before it was needed. But he's always done that stuff for me too, right? So we're not perfect people, but we balance each other's imperfections, and we kind of come up to the moment. And raising two kids is tough. You know what I mean? Like we had 10 years together, Dean, before we had a baby. And so, we had a bit of time to get our relationship and our careers going. And I think that makes a big difference. But one thing I will say, we spent the actual day, the Wednesday, with our neighbors who we pal around with all the time, who have been married for 54 years. So like double us plus 4, right? So 25 seems like a long time unless you hang out with people who've been married successfully much longer, and then you're just a baby, right? So,
yeah. Well, no, it is, but there's like little secrets to that, right? And you figure those out as you go. Like, that lack of self-importance in a relationship being that one thing, right? You've got two healthy people in you and Rob, and you can see it. I don't know you as well as obviously your friends know you, but just the representation of it, unless it's full Facebook representation, and I doubt it is because you're a pretty authentic human being. But there's this level of respect. There's also this fun aspect to your relationship that you see that you don't see in a lot of relationships where they'll hide different parts of the relationship. But what I see in your relationship comes from you. You're a very authentic person. He appears to be a very authentic person. So there's no duplicity in that relationship, which is really easy. But self-awareness, that portion, like if you own your shit, how important, and I realize this late into relationships, right, is the important part of any relationship, any really good relationship, is that someone is capable of looking at themselves and their behavior and knowing where they went wrong, being able to apologize and saying, okay, I've got some work to do. Or, yes, I did something wrong there. I own my side of the street. And when the other person can do the same thing, you got two really healthy people working towards the same goal, so you can be healthy for each other, not healthy on your own so you can get something out of that relationship, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So there's a wanting to be the better, like going to be a better person for that person because you respect them so much. But there's also, Rob and I are party pals. Like we've always loved to party, and so every time we get spare time together, which is not a lot because he works in a different city and we both travel and I'm super busy, and like we're not possessive in any way. I never check where he is or care. You know what I mean? Like if he doesn't
come on, you don't check his location services from time to time? Come on, a little bit. Like, hey, honey, you said you'd be home from the pub and you're not home and it's 45 minutes late. That is trust.
Not only do I not check, but I'm like, if he's stupid enough to step out on me, then he's a fool. And Rob has enough confidence to feel the same way. So we don't check. Like I couldn't care less. He'll come home to me or he won't. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't want to be here. And I'd rather move on to someone who does. Right. So we're just like that. We're both independent people. We have our own thing. But I think we respect each other and we love to have a good time together. I mean, we are the hosting couple. Like we will party and travel, and that's what we love to do.
Is your house, I see your house as one of those houses that, at the end of the day, upwards of 10 to 15 teenagers could be in your house or in your backyard going through your stuff. You walk in with groceries after a long day. One of the teenagers pours you a glass of wine. Hubby's in the backyard yucking it up with everybody. I feel like you're that family in your neighborhood.
Yeah, definitely. And we always, like, our garden gate is always opening. He built a World Cup pub in the basement for the World Cup, and people just came by, and for like a month we're going to be hosting. I forget when it is. It's this summer some point, but like, let's take 3 weeks off or whatever, and we'll just have parties for every game. So I mean, but that's what we had in common. We love current affairs. We love politics. We met in television, right? And we love family and friends. And like, that's it. For our 20th, we threw a big, huge party and our friends were mocking us that we couldn't wait till 25. But I'm glad we did because it was before the pandemic and some people we've lost them since, right? So we're so glad we threw that big fancy bash downtown and all that. But that's who we are. Like, we love nothing more than just sitting there and watching people have a good time. That's like our favorite thing.
Yeah, lost start, right? There's so many people that want to prove a point, or they feel like when they get together with people, it has to have some kind of purpose or function as opposed to getting to know people in those relationships. I didn't realize when I was younger too, the importance of those relationships and connecting with other people, but it's also about surrounding yourself with great people. And you talk about resentment and how it builds walls in those relationships, and we see that extrapolated through some of the content that you and I do. I have never, just to kind of pivot from those, speaking of relationships, I've never lived in a time where any conversation with anybody was impossible, right? I've never lived in a time where, I can't go up to that person and talk to them because what they think is different than I feel. What they do is different, and I don't like the things that they do, but we live in that time, and I see you go through it. I was going through your Twitter feed before we got on. People that admonish you for speaking out against the Liberal government when they do things wrong. And they're like, I can't believe you're going after my guy. That's wrong. That's rude. And you're like, hey, yeah, whatever. You got to live your values and you got to do your thing. But we live in this world where people want to place their resentment on you. They want to take that resentment and they want to say, hey, listen, you just said something I don't like, and therefore I resent you. You're going to talk to somebody I don't like, or you're going to misrepresent. And they feel like there's this ownership, like in relationships, and it's really odd. It's almost like it's a marriage between your audience and your followers, right? Where if you step out of line in their imagination, you're public enemy number one, just as much as the things that they fight, whether it be fascism or politics, whatever the situation, right? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think they call that parasocial relationships, if I'm not wrong, where people have kind of a relationship with someone who's they don't know, but they feel because of their public persona, they know them.
Like Swifties. Every Swifties in a parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that some of that is that, and I'm not a psychologist, but I think when somebody is in your life regularly because they produce content, but there isn't any of that accountability necessary to grow a relationship. And just on that point, like if Rob and I make it to 26 years, Dean, that'll be a blessing. Like I don't take it for granted, right? Like I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we have the perfect marriage. You gotta fight for what you love. But anyway, so I think some of these relationships, they're used to our content. They can find us anytime. So they form a certain set of expectations for us that we can't possibly have for the people who consume our content because we don't know them, right? And so then they form a certain opinion of us in their mind, a certain kind of relationship, consciously or not. And whenever we do anything that doesn't seem completely in alignment with their expectations, or if they're having a bad day, or if they're looking to place some rage somewhere, we're better than with us because we can't really hold them accountable. We can't really break the relationship because we're always available, So it's kind of like it's very one-sided. And I appreciate anyone who consumes any content of mine or listens to a thing I have to say. I think it's a privilege, and I'm really grateful for it. There are people who put you in a certain box, and if you deviate from that box by being authentic to who you are, and they didn't know that part about you, then they feel betrayed, right? And then you get a lot of anger and a lot of accusations. It's a lot, and it's never been as bad as it is now. And that's not because I'm more famous now or anything like that. It's just because people are more frustrated. And it feels like everything has got to be a zero-sum game. And every conversation has got to be a fight to the death. I just had on international author, Canadian, awesome guy, Linwood Barkley on a pod I'm about to post after this. I just interviewed him. And we had a conversation about this, right? About how to handle the social media ecosystem and the world we're in now and all of the untruths that are out there. And he's like, you got to keep pushing back against lies and untruth. It'll never end. It was a really good conversation with a really smart man. And it's this idea of to engage in, and he made the point it's always kind of been that way, but it wasn't as easy for people to get in your face or as fast or, but we also have tools to push back that we didn't used to have, right? So it's kind of like it's the way the world's always been. It might just be faster and more intense, but we have to stay in the conversation. We have to stay in the fight for truth and for the world that we want. And I don't want to paraphrase Linwood because he's the master of words. So people can check out the O Show to listen or see that pod later today. But or whenever they're watching this. But it's just this idea of we're not crazy to feel like things have gone crazy. They feel crazy, and we get a lot more personal attacks than we would have in the past in a lot greater numbers. But that doesn't mean that you just say, "Forget it, I'm out," right? Because I think as soon as we bail, then they win. And like Linwood said, as soon as you lose your cool, they win, right?
Yeah.
So it's about engaging without getting provoked. He uses humor, and he uses, as he says, his books to sometimes grind some axes.
Yeah. You pick and choose your avenues and your channels by which you fight back, or however you want to assert yourself or your perspective or your point of view. I had to get underneath it. Like I'm that guy, that has to figure out the whys to be able to kind of extrapolate out to some kind of answer as to why things are the way they are, right? When it came to my alcoholism, I had to figure out why. What came first? Was it a disease? Did I have a disease, or did I have a mental malady? Did I have a disorder? I have to figure out epistemology. That's kind of how I've always been. I'm that guy that, like, when my parents brought home a Betamax, remember those Betamax? I'm going to teach myself how to use this without instructions, but I also wanted to know exactly how it works. So I read the instructions after I taught myself how to work it. And there was this idea in my head that somehow I was special, right? Somehow I was like, my parents were like, wow, you're really good at technology. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like 12. I just kind of pressed a bunch of buttons and it worked. So I got this false sense of reality, this idea that I was special, right? Somewhere along the way. And you hear that along from parents. You're special. You can do all these kinds of incredible things. And we've been through like a generation of parents telling us we're special, right? We've been through a generation of like, and you and I came from if you failed a class and you failed more than one class, you failed the grade. But somewhere along the lines that changed, where it's like, well, no, let's just pass everybody. Let's give everybody participation. No, you're special in your own way. You'll get it in like the 10th grade. Don't worry about it.
That was not the case in the 70s and 80s, my friend. I don't know where you're getting that shit from. I thought we were the same age.
Yeah. We are, but I'm like on the cusp of it. I think maybe I was just in different schools where like somewhere along the line, that special sort of like, no, it's not your fault that you failed your class. You get to go up with everybody else. The participation world that we live in.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in people that support your content or my content from the left. And I see it a lot from people on the right who don't support our content, but still look at it, right? Who still come for, some kind of subtweet to tell you that you're wrong, or still kind of come to some subtweet to tell you that even though that's your opinion on Trudeau and the Liberals, you're wrong because you disagreed with them. And I've arrived at this place after going out to Alberta, coming back, seeing the, people get angry that I was going to interview David Parker, people seeing angry that I'm going to interview somebody that they don't like, to your point. And it was like an epiphany that I had when I got back. I'm like, holy shit. It's victim chic just to be angry all the time. Like the only way people get attention in this economy is to go, well, I'm going to play the victim here. I'm going to play the victim that has been hurt by the actions of someone I don't know, someone who's doing something that I cannot ascertain any of their intentions, but I'm going to tell everybody what you're doing is an affront, not just to me, but to everybody in this faceless group of people who believe the same things that we magically believe, even though there's no rules of engagement. There's this idea that if you're a victim, you can take that victim mentality and you can project that out to other people, and you can use that to harm others, harm a reputation, and say, woe's us, woe's me. And you know how we've all been focused on the right-wing nut jobs, which are absolutely in existence and running the table, and it exists all over Canada and the country. It's the same on the left, Laura. Yeah. Like it is the exact same. I see the same people come for you that come for me from the same organizations and groups of people who are like, I didn't like what you said, Laura. I didn't like what you said about my prime minister. I didn't like what you said about his comms team. And you're not fighting for the same cause. And it dawned on me because of one tweet. And the tweet was this. It was from somebody. It's like, hey, dude, I can't believe you're not on our team anymore. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? What team is that? Isn't that just team victim now? Like, don't you put both poles in the same category and camp? I do.
Yeah. So, it's a lot. When you say victim chic, my 13-year-old calls it a victim aesthetic, right? Like it becomes your thing, right?
Vibe. It's the whole vibe.
Yeah, it becomes your vibe. And, I think we're all prone to that once in a while because sometimes you do feel victimized because shit can get heavy. But you made me think of when I had Charlie Angus on, the MP. He came on the pod on the O show to warn everybody about authoritarianism and fascism and violence in Canadian politics. It's pretty intense conversation. But one of the things that he said in it was that people are rewarded for anger. So to your point about victimization, there's usually some sort of grievance or wrong within that victim narrative, right? This idea that something has been done to me and I'm justifiably angry and I'm going to get, fired up about that, and that's going to generate clicks and stuff. And it's not wrong. When I post my frustration at something that Doug Ford has done, those tweets go bananas, right? So anger does get clicks. I mean, rage farming is a thing that works. And so the question to me is, I'm not on a team. I have very few fucks to give about how people personally feel about me. My friends love me and my family loves me, and that's good enough for me. What matters to me is, am I being true to myself? Am I being true to my values? Am I being authentic here? Is my outrage authentic? Is my critique fair? And sometimes it's not, I'm sure, but that's the test I put myself through, right? I don't go for totally unbiased like I used to have to do as a journalist, Dean. I don't, because I'm not a journalist anymore. It's too high a bar. Right now, I'm an opinionated person, and all I try to do is say, is this fair, right? Like I never want to disparage somebody unfairly. I don't want to, we've talked about this before, I don't want to punch across or punch down. But that's the lens that I go through, or that's the test I go through. Is the shit that I'm putting out there? Yeah, sure, it might get clickbaits, of course. because it's good commentary, or it's on point, or it's got an edge to it, or whatever. But am I doing it just to rage and be a victim, or am I doing it because this shit is outrageous and I need to speak to it? And so that's sort of where I come down on that.
Yeah, I it's funny because like there's a game to play in there too, right? This in terms of it being. So where do you draw the line in terms of outrage and getting people to see your stuff, right? Like, people will say, as you speak out against this, they could listen to this podcast to play devil's advocate, and they would say, okay, well, Laura, that's good. But like, in 5 out of the 10 videos, you're yelling at the screen, right? You're outraged at the screen. So how much of that, this is just a professional question. I'd be interested to know, because I would put the number at, that equation in my life being a good 50-50, where you're like, you got to play the game with content, but at the same time, you have to be true to what you're talking about and not just farm outrage for the sake of farming outrage, right?
Yeah. So all of the clips that I post where I'm raging are within a 30-minute, usually, conversation on the O Show where I just get pissed. Right. Yeah. So that's why those clips do so well, because I'm authentically pissed. I'm not like hyping or trying to get people. I'm not using keywords to get people pissed off or whatever else. And so that those rants are legit rants. I don't plan them. I just get angry and then I do them. And sometimes I cut the other guests out, when I post them. I just I just edit.
Do you ever get that like invariable email from one of the guests on the show? It's like, oh, all you again, huh? There you go.
No, they're all pretty happy with the amount of coverage they get.
Good.
But and more importantly, I'm lucky to have great guests who absolutely don't give me any. They don't ask for, like, I had Brittle Star on the other day, and Kathleen Wynne, a former premier. They don't ask me the questions I'm going to ask, what we're going to cover. We don't even do green room. We just rock and roll off the top, because they
don't ask you for like an outline of anything that you want to talk to them about. That's fucking awesome.
No. And I just go, like, I'll say to them, I saw this, I want to talk about it, but they know it's a half-hour conversation. I'm going to go anywhere the conversation goes, right? I never have notes. I never have prepared questions. I never prepare my rants. And because that's fun. That's like, to me, that's like a dinner party conversation or a party conversation. I don't want the O Show to ever be structured in any kind of way. And I don't want the guests to ever feel any kind of control, and neither do I. We just go for it. And they never ask me for any editorial approval or control. I edit clips however I want. I never cut their content or take them out of context, and they trust me, and I love that. So when I fire out those clips, they are authentic from the conversation in the show. Now, when I tweet, do I know that if I put the word forward in a tweet, it's going to go faster than if I don't? Of course, I'm not an idiot, right? So there's a little bit of, obvious.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, all of us are gonna go, yeah, we kind of use some of the worst best practices, but it totally fucking works. Yeah, totally.
But you have to, because here's the thing, right? They're best practices. And if we're not using them, then we are just getting a deluge of bullshit coming at us, and I can't fight back with nothing,
Yeah. You got to put it in the same arena the other shit's in, right? Like, you got to be able to kind of tag that stuff in like everybody else is tagging it in to get it seen. How was your interview with Charlie Angus? I love the dude. I think he's great.
You know what? I hadn't met him, but I knew we'd love each other because I was into punk back in the day too. Not at the level he was, but I loved his fearlessness. I love that he's going out of politics.
Oh, he's singing. Yeah.
But he's like he told me on the show, he's like, maybe I should post this clip. He said, there are other MPs who are scared to speak out about the death threats. And they're not even people you would even know, they're not like lightning rods. And he's like, so like, I'm hearing that. And I'm like, I've got to speak to this stuff, like, and at a great cost that to him, right. And to his family and to his daughters. And it's like, disgusting shit, but it's really happening. And when an MP in our area she's quitting politics because of fear for her life. That shit is fascism.
Is that Danoff? Is that Danoff? Pam Danoff? Yeah. She quit. Yeah.
Yeah, she's leaving politics because of death threats. And she comes from like a wealthy, nice little community. And, I mean, like, it's bananas what is going on in this country. And everyone should watch what Charlie Angus said in that episode. I've only done one clip from that show so far, but now you're making me want to work harder. But like, his shit was amazing. And
it was an incredible interview, Laura. I watched it from start to finish. And he detailed, Charlie Angus, for people who are listening, Was on Laura's show called The O Show. You can download, subscribe anywhere you get your fine podcasts. It's a Acast podcast. It's also on YouTube. You can get her there. And your interview with Charlie, and he's going to come on our show too in the next little bit. Yeah. He's been totally great. They've been awesome about it. Just trying to find a little bit of time. But the interview was incredible, and it really you kind of extrapolated from some of his tweets, which he launched after he announced that he was leaving politics, and the reason behind leaving politics that he gave a variety of reasons, but one of them was the threats to his family, the threats to his friends, the threats to his life via political opponents of his, and he kind of detailed who those were and really pointed the finger at Pierre Poilievre and that autocratic messaging, and centered on this one note, telling his followers that this is a participation sport. Go out there and basically make lives miserable, which he did again. David Parker did the same thing in a tweet, make the lives of the people you hate miserable. And people are taking it seriously. And he detailed, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of examples where not only was his life threatened, his safety threatened, but the safety of his family as well via what I'm assuming are Pierre Poilievre supporters.
Well, you know what? And Charlie didn't go so far as to say the causality of it, because that's what him and I talked about, right? I asked him, like, is it causal? Like, how do you?
That's why I said I'm assuming.
Yeah. But it's important, you know. And he said that what he knows is when he says a certain thing in the House, he has this organized attack against him, like, very quickly, right? Stuff in his home riding, you know, his daughters, I think, where they were going to be, where they worked was online. Like, it was. So can he put it at the feet of Pierre Poilievre? No, and he didn't. Is there a highly coincidental that he speaks against Poilievre and sees that stuff, but he never got it when he spoke against the Liberals, and he never got it from he mentioned that none of his opponents from the Liberal Party he never had any experiences like this, and all this shit that he's said over the years about the Liberals. And he detailed some of the attacks he's gone on and all the stuff he's done to make Trudeau's life difficult, with great pride on the pod. But he's never received any of this. So when
he intimated that he only gets threats after he says something or speaks up against the Conservatives or Pierre Poilievre, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Well, yeah, and people can watch it in his own words, but he describes it. And so I said to him that I'll get pushback from people who thought I was more of an NDPer, and they're frustrated that I'm not being fully on board, let's say, with Mayor Andrea Horwath when she ran. I got hell for a year because I didn't jump on board and support her. A lot of my NDP friends were like, how could you betray whatever, and I'm like, I'm not. I just think there's a better candidate at this moment for our city than her. It's like, that's all it comes down to for me. But so there's a sense of, betrayal. And with the Liberals, when I interviewed Kathleen Wynne and I made the point of saying I wasn't a Liberal, I got a comment from a Liberal in Ottawa I'm related to who's like, what did you mean by that, Laura? Why were you so insistent that you're not a Liberal? But I've never had the kind of vitriol and absolute personal attacks and garbage threats that I get when I challenge or critique anything about Poilievre. I didn't get it, honestly, in the past when I went after Harper about his old stock Canadian shit and the barbaric cultural practices line. I did radio shows on that and stuff back in the day, never got anything like now. Now, is it because X is deregulated? Is it because there's now bots and paid campaigns and stuff? Sure. But I also think that there is this permission structure that has been developed by Trump that is being replicated around the world. There are books that have been done on this. Anne Applebaum, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, did a thing on this. They are replicating these tactics of intimidation, and they are good at it, and they flood the zone with it. And if you are standing up to them, as I have been particularly the last 4 days around white supremacy, you get a shit ton of stuff that I even said,
like, what do you get? What do you get back? Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, weird shit about me not being proud of my white race and shit about my kids and weird shit like that. But I also get, veiled threats where I have to say, that's not a threat, right? Like, I'm going to assume the best. You didn't mean that way. But I get a whole lot of, just horrible comments, trying to go at my psyche any way they can. And what they don't know is me. So they don't know that that shit's only going to make me tweet harder and faster. It's not going to slow me down, right? I fucking hate that shit. So it's like, come at me, bitch.
Yeah, it's just come at me, bitch. It's just fuel for people like us, isn't it? It's like, all right, you told me I can't do it. I'm going to do it twice and make you eat it after. That's what I'm going to do.
I got out of high school. I bet my ex-boyfriend $100 that I'd graduate after I dropped out. Right? So, negative motivation fuels me. If they haven't figured that shit out by now, they should know it. But it's terrible stuff, right? Yeah. And I think to myself, like, it's just but stuff I'd never gotten from criticizing. First time I got that kind of nasty stuff was when I would talk about Trump on Charles Adler's show. That's the first time I really can recall getting like mean messages. And I like, ooh, that must be an American thing, right? Like they're rougher with their politics. Now it's here. And we should take that in all of it. I don't know if you saw, I did an op-ed in the Toronto Star a couple of weeks ago, where I just said, let's compare and contrast, shall we? The tactics from the 2016 Trump playbook, 2015 campaign, and Poilievre's. And I did a whole thing in the Star about it. And I got tons of reaction to that op-ed. And because it's like, I detailed all of the pain points in Canada and where it's on Trudeau's responsibility, what's global, what's macro, and then said, and let's look at the language and the tactics that are being used. And you don't, and I think I ended it with, you don't have to like Trudeau or even want him in power to not see what is going on with the Poilievre campaign. And I think Canadians can extrapolate from that what they will, but let's call it when we see it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, and you saw it the other day. It was probably 2 weeks ago. He painfully went through at a police function talking about how he's going to use the notwithstanding clause to be able to enact whatever the fucking thing that he wanted to enact when it came to him being a democratically elected prime minister, to do whatever the fuck he wanted is basically what he said. And then it was weird, cryptically, like 2 weeks later, Arnold Viersen, who looks like a drunk Cabbage Patch doll, announces in the House of Commons, yeah, we would really like to talk about repealing the abortion laws in this country. To your point about fascism, to your point about men making decisions, powerful men making decisions on behalf of an entire country that has settled law where that is concerned, right? Your thoughts, because a lot of people on the conservative side today are saying, well, it's a big stretch to make, we're just talking about the notwithstanding clause. That's very different than what Arnold Viersen wants. But the entire body politic on the conservative side is lining up behind the idea that maybe Canada should put some rules on abortion, and maybe Canada at some point, which is a very fascist thing, right? Like, hey, listen, our right to your body, ladies, is Handmaid's Tale bullshit that you never thought would come to Canada post Morgentaler. At least I didn't. And now here again having that conversation, and we telegraph that. I mean, that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago when Roe v. Wade got pulled back. Everybody was like, it's going to happen in Canada. And Pierre Poilievre stands up and he goes, the Conservative Party will never touch a woman's right to an abortion. And like 2 weeks ago, they just tabled an announcement, floated it in the House of Commons for some micro content. You got this peener religious guy, Arnold Viersen, going, I'd like to talk about the preborn. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. To your point, I mean, it's in those kinds of events, these kinds of things that we see that drip coming to Canada from the United States, where MAGA morphs literally into Maple MAGA. And isn't that just a fascist cult, Laura? Isn't that exactly what it is?
Wake the fuck up, Canada. Seriously. Wake up. Not because I want to see what's happening, or Dean wants to see what's happening, or many people who have been talking about this, Charlie Angus talked about it, Kathleen Wynne and I talked about it. I mean, it's not that we want to see this happening in Canada. But whatever party you're from, if you don't recognize that the erosion of rights is problematic, right? Like, I don't want to see anyone's rights eroded, whether it's abortion rights, whether it's same-sex marriage rights, whether it's equality on any level rights, whether it's disability. I don't want anyone's rights to be rolled back. I don't want anyone standing in the House of Commons and floating out these trial balloons to see if we can just take some rights away around the edges. I don't want that in this country. All of those rights are hard fought for. And if you think for one moment that what we are seeing with Roe v. Wade cannot play out here, then you haven't been following that all the stuff we've been seeing in the US is starting to play out here. Does it look a little different in Canada? Yes, we're a different country. But are there same narratives, similar language, tactics? When Pierre Poilievre, and I wrote about this in the Star, said in the House that, his laws were going to be constitutional. He'd be democratically elected, and therefore his laws would be constitutional. I'm like, what are you talking about? Your laws? That's like, it reminded me of Trump saying, only I can fix it. You don't personalize laws in a democracy. They're not your laws. They may be policies and laws that your party put forward through the House and through the Senate to get made into laws, but they're not your laws, right? And so that language is an autocratic language. I'm not saying he's an autocrat, but it's autocratic language, floating out this idea that maybe we should take a tiny little peek at our abortion, rights in this country. Let's just have a little look, just a tip. No, fuck out of there. I don't want you near that. I don't want you near my body. Jesus. Go away.
But it's in those little drips, right? And that wasn't even a little drip. Like, I see it in the notwithstanding stuff. That's the drip. To have some fucking incel that happens to be an MP stand there and go, we'd like to advocate for the preborn, which, by the way, if I haven't said it before, I'll say it again. It's a woman's right to murder any baby she wants to murder inside her belly. And I know that sounds absolutely fucking terrible to some people, but if you're a man, it is absolutely zero to do with you. Zero to do with you. You can make an informed decision with that significant other, all that other stuff. But if you're a man like Arnold Viersen and you want to weigh in on women's reproductive rights, not only are you an asshole, I can guarantee you're a religious asshole is just doing that for performance points, which brings me to the fascism that you see and I see that is wrapped up in this nice little package called religion, right? Which we've seen over and over and over and over and over again. And it comes out in the apologetics. And you look at a guy like Arnold Viersen, and you can extrapolate from his core belief system why he's doing this, because these people are too stupid to understand science or reproductive rights or basic human rights because they don't believe human rights exist. Is that not why they believe what they believe? Is that not why guys like Arnold Viersen is able to take his core beliefs and turn that into policy? Is that not what the Conservative Party is? Just a vessel of bullshit for, disenfranchised victims? Is it not like specifically religious victims? Is that not what is driving the centerpiece of MAGA and Maple MAGA now? Because it's all I see, Laura. All I see is like the rhetoric from when I grew up, end times, vaccines, mark of the beast, all the bullshit that we've talked about on this program a couple of times. But it is all wrapped up in the same old, which is, hey, we actually are trying to tell you that this is about freedom, but we're really into autocracy to the point where we take all of our orders and directions and we're going to apply those to the Confederacy or to the citizenship from a book that was written in 1611 by King James. Is that not what we're talking about here? Does it not smell of all that to you?
Well, Dean, there's a lot to unpack there. But let me say, I think that number one is it's about greed and power. Because when you mix religion with the power money structures, then it's about greed and power primarily, right?
Right.
And so anyone who is thinking that there isn't a profit power motive for MAGA, I don't think are quite understanding how politics work, right? And when you have power, then you get to change society the way that you want. So first you get it sounds like Scarface, right? First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the woman. First you get the money and power kind of go together in politics. They kind of come up together. And then you get the ability to exert control. And so what is the motive behind that control? What is the narrative behind that exertion of control? I have always felt growing up, in the hell house that I grew up in, that it comes from deep insecurity. It comes from a sense of grievance. It comes from a sense of, I can't make it in the world as it is. I can't succeed on certain social levels or certain relational levels. And so I am going to enforce a system of rules and regulations that level the playing field for me, right? I mean that's how it's always felt to me. It's like,
isn't that a great explanation of victim chic too?
Yeah, for sure. And so it's all victimism. That whole angry, victimized narrative, that peevish, gross bullshit. I mean, someone sent me today a picture of Pierre holding an apple, and I'm like, does anyone find this appealing? Pun intended, right? Like I've said to you before, he gives off Ted Cruz vibes, this peevish, this unsocially awkward, therefore I must dominate and control, and I hate that. And you see it in, I guess, different parties in different ways, but particularly it feels to me like a kind of a conservative vibe. Like maybe high school wasn't so fun.
Very smarmy victim shit. Like the kind of guy that was like, "Hey, I was treated like shit in high school, so I'm gonna relive all my terrible moments and visit them on everybody else." Yeah, that's the entire victim mentality, to the point where I was in Calgary 2 weeks ago interviewing David Parker. Everybody was super pissed that I went and did it, and I don't care. If you've ever read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that's exactly how I feel about everything. So just go read that and don't worry about it. But I went there and I realized not only that it was your initial assessment and my initial assessment of these groups, like the people that think, they want freedom, but it's really freedom from accountability. They want the freedom to be able to turn other people into victims and to monetize that victimhood. You know what I mean? Like it's a scam. To that point, it's a scam from top to bottom, and this is where I'm
power, money and power. Like I mean, I just feel it's money and power. I don't.
It is. But here's the thing, Laura. Every single one of the messaging services that they have, every single op that they have, whether it's like the end of the world is coming, so sell all of give us all your fiat money and put it in precious metals, put it in Bitcoin. Every single one of those monetary aspects of the victim chic group on both sides of the equation, it exists fully on the far right, has to do with one thing and one thing only: separating people from their money while hardening their values and views. Yeah. And that was fucking unbelievable to watch, because I thought to myself, oh my God, the organizers behind whatever this freedom movement is are fully motivated by money. And influence, money and power. How many email addresses can we get? How many different people can we turn into radicalized soldiers for us who will work for free? How many different boards can we take over? And then how can we put on events around all of these things? You're seeing it with the Injection of Truth event that's going on. I've been railing against in Alberta. Tickets are $300 if you want to have popcorn with all these defrocked doctors. You see it with Bitcoin people that run around with these events. After events, a Bitcoin guy will be there, and he will be taking people's money if you want to give it to him. So will a precious metal guy. He'll take that money, and they attach it to the core belief systems of those people, to your point. It's such an effective vehicle. The victim mentality is an effective vehicle for bad political actors, entrepreneurs, and the political business elite to get you to do their jobs for free, to the point you see it in oligarchies. Like last week, Galen Weston was like, hey, we got a volunteer position available for everybody at Loblaws and Shoppers. You can come work for us for free. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, it was accidental. Wasn't it an accidental post after the backlash? You know what? So here's the thing, and this makes me kind of sad, because are there some true believers who really do believe in freedom, or really do believe in Jeebus, or really do believe in whatever? Yes, there are. And are they prone, because they're already kind of subscribing to a belief system, prone to further manipulation? Yeah, I think that they are. They can be manipulated by their pastors. They can be manipulated by whatever. But this idea of these organized political movements taking their beliefs and saying, you know what, not only am I going to reinforce the grievance of your belief, and not only am I going to tell you that you're right to believe that, but I'm now going to sell you 75 things that will reinforce that belief. But it's not new. I mean, we saw it with Tammy Faye Baker, those church ministries back in the 80s that had the TV shows that sold the shit. We've seen that as old as time. There's a particular business that's been running for 2,000 years, called the Catholic Church. When the Pope put out the other day about how they're the one church they've got in Gaza can't have meat. They can only have bread because they have no food. I'm like, well, gee, wouldn't it be nice if you were in charge of one of the most successful business empires on earth and had 1.3 billion customers and vast wealth and land? You could help these folks, like I can't stand that stuff. So, I mean, the idea of organized religion, and I mean, it goes right back to why Martin Luther posted the theses of worms on the door, and worms on the church, is that they were selling indulgences. So this idea of taking people's belief, firing them up with fear and passion and salvation, or whatever the narrative is, and then saying, here, I'm going to sell you these things or make you pay for these things. I mean, that's as old as time. And so, every religion having started as a cult, you know how you talk about how you like to go back and see how did the Betamax really work after you'd figured it out?
Yes, ma'am.
You just described the Betamax guide to starting a cult. I mean, it's exactly what it is. Find what people believe, reinforce it for them, make sure that they know that you see them in a way nobody else does, and then tell them the 75 different accoutrements they need to that belief structure and to stay in that community and start to profit off of it. I mean, we're watching Trump do it all day with a smile on his face. From the Trump Bible to the ridiculous gold shoes to all the other shit that he peddles, they laugh about it. They know that they have got their base feeling seen and valued and understood and accepted in an increasingly lonely world. Sure. And they are profiting directly and shamelessly off of it. And I'm not saying that I'm all wise or anything, but having grown up in a cult, I can tell you what it looks like. And no, don't tell me what to think. Don't tell me what to wear. Don't tell me what to do with my fucking body. And do not try to tell me that I got to buy. That's why I won't even buy a membership to a political party. No, I'm not going to give you money for a belief system. Never, not in any way that I can possibly manage to avoid it.
Yeah, but you get to go to the conference at Edmonton.
Woo! Yay! No offense, Edmonton.
Yeah, but you get to go to the conservative or liberal conference in Winnipeg. That'll be a lot of fun.
I don't. That stuff kind of makes me feel weird. I accidentally tripped into a liberal conference at a bar once. It was happening upstairs, and I didn't realize it when I walked in. And I'm like, oh God, everyone's in the same color, and everyone loves each other. Like I'm not. Get me out of this bar.
Yeah. No, they're all cults, and you nailed it. Like you crushed it there in terms of what is the difference between a real movement and a cult. And I think it's absolutely safe. If we're going to look at numbers, if you look at the triggers and the processes that cults use, I think it's absolutely 100% safe to say that the freedom movement in this country is a cult. The freedom movement abroad, denial of science, denial of reality, hurting other people, hurting other institutions for personal or political gain. And then, of course, the theft of people's reality and the theft of their money. Yeah. The point where if you look at the injection of truth site, at the UCP site, it says, hey, you can donate to this. You can buy tickets to this. There are different levels of tickets. And underneath it, when you click the actual thing, it says, yeah, I'd like to buy these 2 tickets. Would you like to make this a monthly donation? Yes, every single event.
That's not theft. That's not theft. That's
it's intellectual. It's dishonest. It's you and I both know it's an insult to the intelligence, which is why they're doing it, because they know the people they're targeting are not intelligent, right?
But it's not crime. It's not and it's not theft. And I say that because if you call it theft, then there's again victimhood, right? I have been ripped off by these people, or I have been victimized by them. You've been manipulated. You have been manipulated, targeted, manipulated, and I'm sure I'm prone to manipulation as well. But it's not theft if you are giving them that bank account, if you are signing up to that monthly pledge. They have given you a value proposition that you found you couldn't say no to. So, I mean, it's marketing, right? But are the people who are doing it and taking advantage of people's frustration or people's one pain point or people's sense of isolation and loneliness and exploiting it for their own profit and laughing in the faces of those people? Yeah, that sucks. There's a special, and I don't believe in hell, but if there were, there'd be a layer just for the people who do that kind of marketing, right? Who do that kind of exploiting of vulnerable people. I mean, they are the lowest of the low. And so what drives people to be that cruel and vicious and shameless? I think power and money. I really do. I think the inherent need to survive, and for some that means at the cost of all others' survival. That feral instinct that drives Donald Trump. he's incredible to watch. I mean, only he could turn a trial into a victory for himself.
Isn't it I have, it's unbelievable to me, the cognitive dissonance, the inability to, it's almost, if I didn't hate him as much as I hated him, it's almost impressive, his ability to separate himself from any stress of his actuality of 88 to 91 different indictments, going through the hush money trial, getting literally embarrassed from top to bottom for the past 5 weeks, having people, you say, yeah, he's totally a fucking criminal and he totally did these things, being a convicted rapist, and to continually stand there day after day after day and go, yeah, they're all wrong. And that's really the amazing part of this cult, right? Is when I watch these people in action, fortunate enough to see it in real time when I was in Alberta, it was amazing to see the constant reinforcement of each other's core beliefs, even in groups of people that didn't believe the same thing. It's because they all wanted the same result. And that result from each one of the people on the grift end, the people who are being manipulated, to your point, and thank you for correcting me, you're right, they're not being thieved. I think they're mentally being thieved, but I think they're being manipulated into giving people their money, is the end goal is they need you to think that you're special while pilfering what they can from you, getting you to do their work for you to that point. There is a special place in hell for those people who know that they're using the unwell and they're literally monetizing resentment among a group of people who don't have the ability to think critically or clearly in those moments. They know exactly what they're doing. And I'll tell you why I know it, because they've told me that they know what they're doing. They've told me that it's not easy to have an army full of idiots do your bidding for you, so you have to spread it around. It's exactly the term that I heard. Spread it around.
It's like Trump saying, I love uneducated people, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just says the quiet part out loud. He doesn't even say it over years, right? I mean, so, I mean, but that's part, I would be shocked if people who run organizations that look cultish and profit off of people's pain were not aware of what they're doing, because you need that certain dispassionate calculation to do it, to build a cult, to be able to figure out how to turn people's pain into profit and product requires a clear-eyed vision of how to exploit. And there are those people among us, there always have been. And what it requires is for the rest of us who hopefully are not like that, but can see the dark arts that are at play, to say, you know what, that shit is happening. And I can't convince you out of a cult. Like, deprogramming is a tough thing. But what I can do is my responsibility to warn you about it, and possibly to offer relational support, which is, I think, the only way that you can deprogram somebody, is for them to feel a sense of being valued elsewhere from outside of that increasingly intense cult that they're in, right? Is that, no, actually, you can be loved elsewhere. You can, there are things about you that are redeeming outside of the values and what we push here. You are a good person independent of this space, with relationship possibilities outside of this group. And I think that's the only way that people ever leave those things, right? Is they have to feel value and hope.
Yeah, well, I've mocked them for a good 2 years, and that seemed to upset them more. So I decided to go and talk to some of them. Yeah, I carved them for a good 2-3 years. That seemed to upset them quite a bit. Pointed out their hypocrisy, held them to facts they didn't like, mocked them all, called them hillbillies. And so what I decided to do was go to Calgary to meet them. And, the crazy part is I liked a lot of them. Like, I liked a lot of people in the freedom movement, really enjoyed some conversations that I had, was absolutely fucking terrified by some of the conversations that I had. But the one thing that came together for me, and it was like these puzzle pieces that have keep coming together, you put them together, and one day you might be like, oh, this is what I thought, but here's what I think. But it was kind of originally what we all assessed it to be, which is just a group of people. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Like, some of them are lovely, lovely people, Laura.
Yeah.
That most of which are not very smart. They're very fed up, and they're all victims. And the only thing that is driving the freedom movement, which is also the same thing that is driving the freak left movement, freak right, freak left, the people that hit each other with megaphones over inclusivity and love, like those people, what drives each one of these people is the exact same thing. Outside of cognitive dissonance, you have to be a certain horsepower of IQ. And I won't get into it or make people feel bad, but it's resentment and thinking that your position in life sucks and that it is everybody else's fault. That is like the number one thing on both sides of this crazy victim IQ, victim chic equation that the body politic, that people in certain industries have picked up on. It's like, hey, if we align ourselves with that group of victims, we can get them to go do a bunch of stuff for us. And these people are so fed up. If they're willing to go out and protest, if they're willing to go hit people with megaphones, if they're willing to camp out in the fucking ditch for a month on the Lloydminster border, they're willing to give us money. So figure out a way to get their email addresses, and let's make sure we fire hose them into our ecosystem. They're like little jihadists with bank accounts. It's like, and you know what? I used to get angry at them all the time. I feel like I left Alberta and I came back here to the cacophony of people who were really mad that I actually just went to Alberta to interview somebody so I could get some information about how the fucking thing works. And I thought to myself, my God, I feel sorry for these people.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, I feel sorry for them because they've been told and reinforced that their life sucks. They've also been told, and it's been reinforced, there's nothing that can be done for you, nothing, with the exception of you giving me your money so I can go fight for you. You stay right there. Just give me your money, give me your support, send these emails, forward these Facebook posts. This is how it works, Laura. And give us money and we'll go take care of it for you. And I thought to myself, oh, that's age old. That's the Nigerian prince scam. That's every internet scam in the world. It is legitimately powered cognitive dissonance, hatred, anger, misinformation, disinformation is powered by a group of people, a small group of people who just want your money, to your point, so they can get more power. That's it. That's all it is.
Because more power means more money, and more money means more power, and then you can protect your own, and then you can make life better for your descendants and for your friends, and you know,
people in your ideology, people at your church, people in your community. To that point.
I don't even believe in the I mean, I think ideologies that people subscribe to are often just, you know, like coats they put on for time in their life to feel warm. You know, I don't even think a lot of that stuff is truly believed at a deep level. And when it is, that's when you have to do the deprogramming. That's when it's a really long, tough process. But I think for a lot of other people, it's the code of the moment, the code of the time, you know, and you hope that they'll realize that there is warm options, other layers to themselves or elsewhere that they can find. And that can come from self-respect, self-esteem, you know, good support systems, all the rest of it. But I don't think that a lot of these people profiteering are ideological at all. I think that they just understand what a profitable ideology looks like and how to sell it.
The organizers, you mean? Yeah, the people at the top of the food chain. Yeah, they know. They know. They a lot of these people, you know, and I talked to some people that did not share the ideology of anybody in the freedom movement who absolutely are there for the money and the opportunity. Absolutely.
But to the point about ideology, I guess the reason, and maybe that's just a fallacy I tell myself because it makes me sleep at night, but I just don't believe that the level. So I try to put out little test tweets. If you talk about manipulation, I do sometimes put out little tests just to see, you know, where things are at. And so I decided the other day, instead of railing against things, I was going to put out a vision statement for the kind of country I want. And I just put it down. I didn't put party anything to it. Got a huge response back to it. People immediately saying, well, then you have to vote conservative, or people saying, well, then you can never vote conservative. And I was fascinated to see in all of these, you know, I want a country that does this, that doesn't do this, that does this, how quickly people had to attack it from an extreme position, as opposed to saying, well, there are a couple of things my party does that are like that, and a couple of things my party does that doesn't, and why is that important to her? Is that important to me? A few people did that reflective exercise, which is what I put it out to be. But so many people came at it. But to your point, 100% of conviction, but from two polar opposites. So it's like, how can a list of attributes be seen to be 100% on one end of the scale, 100% on the other end of the scale. Like it's amazing to see. And so I think that a lot of that fierce ideological, I gotta fight for this. This is my raison d'être. This is my whatever. I think that that's a cloak that we wear at a time for a while. And I think that people can have the power to remove it, to cut the armholes out so they can breathe a little bit, change it up a little bit, make it more themselves and less the code of the tribe. I mean, look at the fucking ties that the Trump cultists wore, those senators, when they showed up at court. All of them dressed like, talk about Handmaid's Tale. They're wearing those red Trump ties, standing there like idiots. And I thought to myself, like, how do you have any? And then I realized, oh yeah, you're the guys making millions off of this shit. You're wearing the uniform because you're going to make more money off your fundraising for doing it. But they're, red tie sales are going to be the next MAGA thing after the gold shoes. Because it's giving people more of the cloak, right? And give me more, sell me more of that. And I just want people who are watching to know, listen, if you feel like you're wearing the coat, you're really into it, you're really, 100% it's got to be Pierre, or 100% it's got to be Justin, or whatever. Say to yourself, why 100%? Like what could they improve on? What areas give you pause? What things are a little bit, maybe this coat would be better if I did cut those sleeves off. Like you don't have to wear it whole cloth.
Yeah. But that requires nuance and critical thought, right? And that's
I won't give up on it. Like Linwood Barclay said, he had this hilarious moment in the, which I think I'll put on a clip after this, where he said, it's like the police are never going to say, yep, we're done. No more break-ins are ever going to happen. Like it's never going to stop our need to fight for truth and for critical thinking and for self, and for people to have, I have a wonderful client who always uses this word, just to slip my mind for a moment, agency, agency, like people who are in cults have given up their agency. And so it's about, how do you get that back for them? How do they get that back? Right.
One of the most important words, and I use it and some people don't know what it means. When you say, hey, you don't give people your agency in business to be able to create your own course or chart your own course, you never want to give away your agency, financial agency, creative agency. And that's the ability to make a decision based on information that you have. And anytime that you are emotionally wrapped up in something, anytime you give someone money out of emotion, anytime you act out of emotion, the second you act out of negative emotion, in that capacity, you give away your agency. The second you say something on behalf of a group of people, any group of people, you give your agency to that group. And so you become that group and your agency is gone. And it's really easy for a lot of people that don't understand what agency means to get involved in that exercise where they give away their agency and then they'll make a mistake or they'll say something online or they'll upset that group of people. And all of a sudden, not only do they not have any agency themselves, they don't have any agency in that group. Right.
Can I tell you a little story? Can I tell you a little
please. Yeah.
I've never told this before, I don't think. So I used to run a chamber of commerce, and so we'd go on these chamber conferences all the time, and all the big hoot and fluting. And to the point about that, yes, was selling memberships with the promise to fight for the things that would help those businesses. And I always said to my members, if you're going to be a member here, I would have my sales manager go through all their expectations and then see if they got value so we could deliver the goods, because I didn't want to, take their money on false hope, to the point of the discussion we just had. It's bullshit, right? If you're going to help people and take their money to fight for them or to organize for them, then you better deliver. Same goes with unions or anybody else. So anyway, so I'm at this party and it's a shishi thing in Toronto, and someone adjacent to the current prime minister was there, and was, hadn't met me before, got into a little group of us talking, started to get very impressed by me, just the usual political skill set, and then started to do the old, I could get you a meeting with the prime minister if you would consider running, and, blah, blah, maybe a cabinet post and blah, blah. And I was like 28 or 9 or something, and I wasn't into politics in a partisan way. And I was like, I said, well, that's an interesting offer, and partly bullshit, I'm sure, because it's cocktail party. But then I made a joke, not a joke. I made a comment about how hellish life was in Winnipeg, and I remember this immediate. you could never run for our party because you said something about part of the country. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, first of all, I really didn't
Have
care.
You been to Winnipeg? Kevin, come on. Yeah.
I'm like, and I said to the dude, I said, there will never be a time in my life where I don't shit on Winnipeg winters. It's never going to fucking happen. So like, I will not give up my agency for a political party if I have to lie about what it was like to walk to the fucking bus in Winnipeg 5 times a day. Like it's never, and no, some things matter too much, Dean.
Yeah.
Some things are too true. So that's my point. Like immediately I realized at that moment, any kind of political career, not that had ever been on my plate, but I was like, oh, you're putting this on my plate as an option? Okay. Any political career, I'd have to give up my agency.
Well, you give up your agency when you join a political party. You give up your agency when you join a religion. You give up your agency when you join the Lions Club. You give up your agency when you join the Freemasons group. You give up agency anytime you dedicate yourself to any group of people, any ideology, any community where you have to be a card-carrying member. And here's the fucking problem. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. When I talk to people who believe in any kind of man-made religion, and by the way, they're all man-made. They're all started off as cults. We've already talked about that. Anytime you give your money on a monthly basis, anytime you give your effort to a higher calling, you're involved in something called no agency. You give it away. You're like, oh, here you go. Here's all my decision-making ability. You can never speak your mind, to Laura's point. You can't come out against something, which is why you see certain politicians dance around questions that they ask, like Rachel Thomas a couple weeks ago. You want to get rid of Radio Canada? Do you want to get rid of that? And she's like, I side with the guy. I believe what the leader believes. And you know what? There is nothing less attractive in a human being than someone who does that. There is nothing worse for your psyche, your spirit, than not being able to actually speak how you feel, not being able to have some kind of free-flowing conversation that's top of mind, that speaks to your convictions and values, no matter what those values are. Do some people have shitty values? 1,000%. But in that moment, the second you give away your agency, your money, your decision-making ability, and I want everybody to remember this, that's out there flying flags for Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, like 2 of you, or Pierre Poilievre, or any group of people who are like, yeah, join our group. We're going to go after them. If you join any group that intends on hurting another group of people or other people, not only do you take your agency away, you're in a cult. There's no other way to explain it to you. That's exactly what it is. There are financial cults. There are religious cults. There are social cults. Anytime there's a group of people that demands money for your fealty and your agency so that they can get their stuff done, you're in a cult. How close am I to a fact here? Pretty close?
Well, I mean, I think that there are organizations, like I mentioned, unions, chambers of commerce, other groups that you pay a membership fee in exchange for services, right? So there's membership organizations. Where that would become cultish is a demand of fealty for it. Like I would never say to any of my chamber members, you cannot speak out against the chamber. You can, you cannot join another business group. You must defer to me in the decision. Like that's bullshit. You fight, like argue, complain, threaten to take your membership, keep your agency, and let's see if we can't collectively move forward on some policies or agenda items, right? So I think that's the difference, is the organization demanding fealty, demanding loyalty, demanding parroting talking points, making you say something that is not from your fucking soul. That's where I chafe, Dean. That is where I bulk. I can't stand that, and I'm sure I've lost all kinds of contracts or people approaching my company because they know that there's no way that, you're ever going to put a word in my mouth. And I'm not a spokesperson for anybody, but you're not even going to like make me fall in line ever. It's just, I'm not capable of it. And I accept that about myself. Right. And I've done pretty well by trying to keep my agency and helping other people keep theirs. You can do a lot more good in this world by keeping your agency. You can do a lot more good in this world by advancing the collective good, by working together with people to change laws or to change circumstances. I mean, I've led marches. I've done that stuff. I'm all about people working together and being passionate. But you have to keep your agency. And that's why I've even said with these Palestinian, pro-Palestinian marches, the second somebody else in that crowd is saying something that you don't believe in, you freaking make sure you're on the record. Pick up your phone and say, this is not me. I have agency, right? I have agency to my own beliefs. I think that's critical. So yeah, I mean, I sweeping statement. If people are asking for your money so they can go and do shit and they're profiting off it, and they're not delivering anything to you other than the good feels. Yeah, you're, and they're telling you that you can't live without them and you can't succeed without them and you got nobody else who's going to love you. Yeah, it's a fucking cult. Run, run early and fast.
There you go, kids. The Laura Babcock, just co-signing anything of mine is always a good day. The O Show is the name of the podcast. You can get it anywhere. You get your fine podcasts and Acast property, Google, Apple, Spotify, etc. Her YouTube channel as well. It's where you can see her and all of her lovely guests take on anyone and everyone they feel like taking on, including corrupt politicians. And she talks a lot about agency and fascism. So to your point, really appreciate you doing this. And by the way, just a quick note, the Loblaws boycott that we talked about last time you were on, so successful. It's going to be perpetual now. Everybody's going to we're just going to keep boycotting. Galen Weston, apparently that was the news that came out today. Did you see that?
Yeah, I love that they put out a statement a week or two ago that it wasn't working. And I'm like, well, then I'll try harder. You know what I mean? That didn't help. But just a couple of quick points. Thank you. And I just want to know the holding politicians to account. Nobody does it better on the O Show than our scandal panel of Mark Cripps and Keith Leslie. And they are on next week about Ford's latest shenanigans. So that'll be really fun. But also, Dean, if you want to cut out the entire part about my marriage off the top of the show, because you and I always talk like forever, and I can't imagine anyone's got this kind of time, feel free. I will not be offended, because as much
I'm keeping it in there because there's like a whole bunch of French kissing references, so we're going to keep that in there.
All right.
Yeah. No, that's the human part. Hey, listen, if we can't help people with their marriages, what can we do? Right?
All right.
Why are we here?
Yeah, well, just have fun. Try to have fun with the person too, right? That's key.
Yeah.
Listen, I love having this conversation. Can I have you on the O Show at some point?
Anytime.
I feel like this should be reciprocal. Okay, we'll do it. We'll book it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, sister. Be good. Laura Babcock, ladies and gentlemen, from the O Show. She is one of my favorite people in the whole world. Everybody, look at her. Look at her. Look at that woman. Look at her. She's going to go get into her backyard. She's going to get into her Punta Canada. You got to go fill up that drink again, too.
Prosecco progressive. I need more Prosecco.
Laura, thanks for doing this. We'll talk to you soon. Laura Babcock, ladies and gentlemen. Laura Babcock on Twitter. You can find her show, The O Show, anywhere you get your fine podcast. She's smart. She's good. She's like a grounding rod. She should be a grounding rod for everybody in the business. She knows how to get around a conversation. And I have these conversations so I can learn some stuff too. That's how we're supposed to be, right? Right? You learn and then you get better. And then you take that and you go, here you go. I learned and I'm getting better. Look at all this thing. Here it is. Here's the gift of my learning. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks to Laura for stopping by today. Don't forget, you can get everything she does on YouTube, anywhere you get your fine podcast, The O Show, just the letter O and then show. She's awesome. She's awesome. She'll educate you. She'll educate me. She'll educate the world. Thanks to our friends and partners for making this possible as well. Everybody from Muse on the Mic, the podcast, download it. Sexologists that'll take you through a healthy relationship, and they will tell you a little bit about the industry as well. Emily and Riley have a great podcast called Muse on the Mic. Download it today anywhere you get your fine podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify. Of course, you can also get it at Patreon as well, the paid version. And special thank you to our friends at Cantork for making this possible, makers of rugged, hardworking tools. They make torque wrenches for heavy industry around the world. They're the best in the world at it, like legitimately. They do boring machines, tunnel machines, nuclear industry, railroad, forestry, doesn't matter what they do. They've got you covered, and they'll make any torque wrench that you need for any bolting solution, no matter your industry, and they will make sure it works, and they guarantee their work, and they'll take care of it. They'll fabricate it. They'll clean it. They'll do all the stuff that you need to make. Yeah, that's how it works. So go to cantork.com, check out Colin's new website, check out all his products and services, cantork.com today. And brought to you by Fact Check. Go to factcheck.io if you want to test out some of the world's greatest disinformation killing software. Software addicts, we got scientists, journalists, evolutionary psychologists working on a fix and a solution to kill disinformation worldwide. It is bizarre what this thing does. Combines AI with real-time stuff. I can't even speak to the connections that it has, but the information that it gives you and the report it gives you about what you're trying to figure out if it's real or not is second to none. It comes with the full epistemology, pathology behind the information that you're looking at. Go to factcheck.io if you would like to join their beta team today. Become a verified fact checker, FAKTCHEK.io. Check them out today. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Don't forget, everything we do can be at crier.co. You can find us Crier Media YouTube channel as well on Twitter, Crier Media, social media, Crier Media, at it's Dean Blundell on Twitter. Have a great day. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to tip your waiter like we have those. Never tip on takeout. Never, ever tip on takeout. Ever. No matter what you do. Get in line. Bye.